Quiet Revolution was a time of advocacy for French language rights and modernization in Quebec's government and Greater Canada. During the 1960s and 70s, conflict over French rights, education, government secularization, and openings for French Canadians in higher-skilled jobs took place. As a result of this time of conflict, bills were passed such as Bill 101, making French the primary language of Quebec, and the Official Languages Act, which made Canada a bilingual country. The Quiet Revolution led from conflict over French rights to new laws strengthening French culture, higher-skilled jobs, and education for people all across Quebec. These are compromises that helped keep Canada united and continue impacting the economy and culture in Quebec today. For most of the 1600s and 1700s, Quebec City was a French settlement. In the late 1700s, France and England fought over lands in North America in places such as Quebec. In 1759, British forces attacked French forces on the Plains of Abraham outside Quebec City. British forces won the battle, taking over Quebec and the rest of Canada. This change in power would affect Quebec and Canada throughout all the years until the Quiet Revolution. In the years following the battle on the Plains of Abraham, revolts by unprepared and badly trained French nationalists were easily defeated by British Canadian forces. Tensions between Anglophones and Francophones in Quebec continued growing. Throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, Quebec's government was mostly conservative and dominated mainly by Anglophone politicians. Most French Canadian citizens lived isolated in impoverished rural communities and had strong ties with the Roman Catholic Church. Into the mid-1900s, many citizens and politicians across Canada and worldwide were unaware of the underdeveloped and undereducated conditions of many French Canadians in Quebec. Into the late 1950s and early 1960s, many French Canadian citizens moving into Quebec's major cities, urbanizing the province. This era of change revealed Quebec's unstable economy and the divides that have been separating the people. In 1959, the Premier of Quebec, Aristide Duplessis, died, ending an era of conservative rule under his party Union Nationale. Many people in Quebec were ready for a change because of the lack of economic growth. Parti Liberal's candidate, Jean Lesage, ran for Premier under the campaign slogan, C'est le temps que l'on change, meaning it's time for a change. This slogan won the hearts of many voters. In the following year, the General Assembly election in Quebec voted in Parti Liberal under Jean Lesage, the first party other than Union Nationale to be elected in over 2 decades. This election led to government secularization, making Quebec more relevant to the modern society of Canada. The election of Parti Liberal brought forward the goals of modernization in Quebec and uniting the province for a more equal society. This election would change the history of Quebec, paving a way for the Quiet Revolution. During the time after the election, many French Canadian citizens started to speak their mind about French language rights due to the new political climate. This drew worldwide attention to the growing tensions in Quebec. Many people protested for their rights as citizens with French heritage, citizens known as Québécois. They went by the slogan Maîtresse chez nous, or masters in our own house. They protested to restore French culture and language, along with the modernization of Quebec's economy and educational system. They believed that losing their culture would be losing who they were as Québécois. The Quiet Revolution, named for its mainly peaceful protests and marches, promoted French language rights, better education, and higher-skilled jobs for French Canadians throughout Quebec and Canada.
The Quiet Revolution is a period of rapid change in Quebec when the province, what we can call, modernizes, and it catches up with its education systems and government systems with North America.
Due to these rising conflicts, many Anglophones started moving out of Quebec to other provinces such as Ontario and Manitoba. The growing divides between Anglophones and Francophones became referred to as the Two Solitudes. In 1962, Hydro-Quebec, a hydroelectric company, was the first major business to allow French as well as English in the workspace. The company hired more French-speaking and bilingual workers in management jobs that had been usually occupied by English-speaking workers. This compromise helped secure the role of both English and French languages in Quebec. This compromise also supported the ideas of restoring French culture, in the end spurring more conflict. In 1969, the Official Languages Act was passed by Canada's Parliament as recommended by the Royal Commission on Bilingualism and Biculturalism, which was established in 1963 in response to the protests of the Quiet Revolution. Pierre Trudeau, the Prime Minister at this time, supported this act because he had grown up in Quebec and understood the conflict. The Official Languages Act made French the official language of Canada, along with English, and worked to recognize both Anglophone and Francophone communities in Canada. These compromises would serve to bridge the gap between the two solitudes in Quebec, as well as make Quebec the stronghold for French culture in Canada. The growing French nationalist movement in Quebec, a result of the Quiet Revolution, raised the question of Quebec's sovereignty. Political parties such as Bloc Québécois and Parti Québécois led the separatist efforts. In 1977, Bill 101, or the Charter of French Language, was passed by Parti Québécois' government under René Lévesque. This bill stated that all public schools in Quebec had to be taught in French. However, all citizens of Quebec whose parents had been educated in English were given the choice to go to an English public school. This bill also stated that all government operations were to be conducted in French. The bill was quickly revised to include more Anglophone rights.
And they argued that you can't separate your language from your culture. If you lose the French language, we will lose French culture.
3 years later, in 1980, Parti Québécois, led by René Lévesque, proposed a referendum for sovereignty in Quebec. The people of Quebec were given a chance to vote to negotiate a new constitutional agreement with the rest of Canada based on the equality of nation, as written in the referendum draft. The result of the vote was 60% no and 40% yes. Although most Canadians thought the vote would lean towards yes, many people in Quebec were proud to be Canadian. In 1995, the new Premier of Quebec, Jacques Parizeau, former leader of Parti Québécois, promised his supporters to propose a referendum of separatism after the many failed efforts of the former Premier. The 1990 referendum to secede from Canada ended with thin margins, and the yes or we side at 49.42% and the no or no side at 50.58%. In the end, Quebec voted not to secede from Canada, ending an era of separatism.
They didn't. The thing was a victim of its own success. Everything that René Lévesque and others like him had said that Ottawa would never give us, that the English would never give us, we got.
Quebec has changed in many ways since the Quiet Revolution. Due to the integration of French-speaking Canadians in the higher-skilled workplace and the modernization of Quebec's government, the economy has improved. Although many Anglophone businesses left Quebec in the 1960s and 70s, Quebec's economy has still grown and improved since. One of the biggest compromises of the Quiet Revolution was the Official Languages Act of 1969. Since then, the number of Quebec citizens who are fluent in both English and French has grown significantly. People who are fluent in both English and French have had the highest growth in income. Today, not speaking French in Quebec is almost impossible. Everything from restaurant interactions to business transactions is in French. Quebec's license plates say, Je me souviens, or I will remember, to symbolize the importance of their French heritage. The 1960s Quiet Revolution rose out of the conflict between Anglophones and Francophones in Quebec. Since then, Quebec has changed and reformed. The compromises achieved by the Quiet Revolution set new goals for cultural respect and unity in Quebec and Greater Canada.
We've got to stay together. We've got to find each other now. That is how we can learn